Welcome back to the Foreign Desk. I'm Lisa Daftari, today with a special episode in collaboration with the Persian American Women's Conference. We have two extraordinary guests from two very different walks of life, but that share an incredible journey in courage, in resilience, and that will to stand up for what's right. Welcome. I will read their bios so I don't miss anything because they're highly accomplished. We'll start with Princess Noor Pahlavi, who's a writer and activist, a member of Iran's exiled royal family, as you very well know her, I'm sure, known for using her global platform to advocate for human rights, particularly the rights of women in Iran. Her voice has become a symbol of resilience and hope for countless Iranians, both at home and abroad. Welcome to the show. And we have Montana Tucker, who also needs no introduction, an award-winning singer and dancer, social media creator, who's made her mark not only through entertainment, but through her education and advocacy. Her How to Never Forget series that was about the Holocaust reached millions, and then in the wake of October 7th, she has emerged as a leading voice against anti-Semitism, speaking out globally to unite communities and combat hate through education and compelling storytelling, which is an incredible talent. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
You know, Noor, Montana, I want to start out talking about courage, which I think will be a very repeated theme here in our conversation. You know, courage isn't something that you dream of or, you sleep and wake up thinking, I have to be courageous today. It happens. It just happens. For different people, different times, something happens and it becomes very personal. So for each of you, I mean, when was the moment when you thought, okay, now I need to stand up? Montana.
I'm the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors, and I grew up with my grandparents' stories my whole life. My grandparents were the strongest, bravest, kindest human beings in the world, and they are everything to me. Unfortunately, my Zaidi passed away 6 years ago. Zaidi means grandpa in Yiddish. He passed away 6 years ago at age 97, and my grandma Lily is still alive today at age 96,
Amazing.
But unfortunately suffers with Alzheimer's disease of 16 years. But I grew up hearing their stories, and I watched the Shoah Foundation testimonies that they did about their experiences, and they are the bravest people, what they went through, and to survive and to still have the will to live and the will to love people after everything that they experienced. That was really instilled in my mother, who instilled that in me, and everything I do is because of them, honestly.
Noor, how about you?
I think being part of the family that I've grown up in, it's never been a question that life's meant to be led in service of something greater than oneself. My grandmother has overcome tremendous loss, the loss of her children, and faced it all with grace, the loss of her country, the loss of her husband. And I feel like she serves as a pillar of strength that really embodies the Iranian spirit. And watching her navigate all of that really has always inspired me. And my father as well, he, left Iran and could have lived any kind of life he wanted here, but instead, despite all of the threats he was under to his life, he chose to stand up and fight for the freedom of the people in the country that he left behind. So I think it was always there, and I, was born in this position and intend to honor their legacy and always have. So I always have intended that. I hope to.
Yeah, I think before we started shooting, you and I spoke about how you don't need to do this. You can have a really nice private life away from scrutiny, away from the pressure of being in politics or activism. I mean, what was the moment that you decided that because you're in this position, you need to do this?
Well, I've always had a private life. I've always worked, and my parents kept these things as separate as they could for, I think, as long as they could. But being as close to my father and grandmother as I am, and admiring them the way that I do, and learning so much about Iran, what it was, what it could be, I got attached to their dreams myself. And I think particularly in the wake of all of the Mahsa Amini protests and the ongoing revolution that's happening there now, identifying with the youth in particular, and being aware that, that could have been me. These people are my brothers and sisters there, and they're so brave, and they're deserving of the freedoms that I grew up with here. And there's a deep empathy for that in me. So it really wasn't a choice or a conscious decision, but sort of happened, I guess.
I think a lot of people feel that way. I just want to stay on the topic of your family, and then I want Montana to chime in, because I think your family also affects so much of what you do. But I know, as an Iranian American myself, I grew up, with dinner table conversations, so I felt like I knew what Iran was like pre-revolution, right? Even though I've never been to Iran. And I can only imagine the colorful stories that you've heard. I mean, both pain and joy, right? So maybe walk us through some of that. I mean, what was it like sitting on your grandmother's lap and hearing these stories? Or what was it like hearing maybe some of the more troubling times that your parents went through or talked about?
They never really talked about the troubling times at the dinner table. The stuff that my grandmother would talk about was, really Iranian culture and the different provinces and her visits to these provinces and, what she saw, what she experienced, what they would do when they would go on vacations. And, I think a big part of this that's sad, at least for when I hear my dad talk about it, is that he's so deeply tied to nature and the environment, and that a lot of the places that perhaps they went for vacations and water skied or did these outdoor activities no longer exist because of mismanagement and resources, and the country just looks so different now than the one that they got to experience, and hopefully we can reverse a lot of the damage that's been done in the future. But I feel so aware that the country they left might not be the country they step back into when they return, which is quite sad.
It is sad. Montana, listening to Noor and how, her family and her ties to Iran really affect her, inspires her to get up and speak and to use her platform. I know you felt the same way during October 7th. And even before that about the Holocaust. But I think October 7th, because it was more recent, was something that people recall, remember. I know growing up, you think, who would stand by and let the Holocaust happen? And now we're the ones who are witnesses to October 7th and allowing the world to stand by and let that happen. Tell us more about how October 7th, the attacks, how they affected you personally. I mean, what was your aha moment where you're like, I gotta now shift gears, and this is going to be my new trajectory?
Well, October 7th was the deadliest day of Jews since the Holocaust. And I bring up my grandparents all the time because my grandparents, my Zaidi specifically, he would talk to anyone that he met about the Holocaust. He would wear pins every day that said survivor and never forget and never again. And literally he would talk to a fly on the wall about his experience to make sure nothing like that would ever happen again. And in his Shoah Foundation testimony, he shared a story about how he had friends that he was friends with his whole life before the Holocaust, non-Jews, that they were friends. They would play like normal kids. And then when all the announcements started happening from Hitler and from the Nazis that Jews were the reason for, the economy declining and Jews were the reason for all the problems in the world, literally the next day he would go to school and he got spit on and kicked on. And these friends that were his friends would say, "You dirty Jew." And then
sounds familiar, right?
Exactly. There was a literal thing in California, I believe it was in the Valley somewhere, maybe Woodland Hills or Encino, of a kid going to school and getting spit on and kicked and was called a dirty Jew. I mean, it was verbatim, the exact same story that my Zaidi told. So for me, when I hear these stories, it reminds me so much of my grandparents and what they went through. And me on social media, I grew my social media platforms not from my activism. I grew my platforms from dancing, from singing, from acting. But I know for a fact, if my grandparents had social media back then, I know they would have done everything that they could to post every single day and do everything they could if that was their way of getting their word out. So for me, people weren't following me to hear me talk about the Holocaust or to hear me talk about, the Jewish people or October 7th or even just standing for humanity, because I feel I really use my platform not just to stand for the Jewish people, but to stand for all different types of people all around the world, of all religions, all ethnicities, et cetera. So for me, when October 7th happened, I think, I sometimes say maybe it's generational trauma in a certain way, that something really did completely come over me and say, I have to do this. It's not even a question, should I do this? Is this going to affect my career? Is this going to affect my relationships? It was like, this is what I have to do. This is what everyone should be doing. It's so obvious what is happening here. But, there are still Holocaust deniers. right? Still to this day,
With
people
all the
still
evidence.
deny the Holocaust.
Right.
When we have all the evidence, we have living survivors that are still here.
Right.
And now the difference is Hitler and the Nazis, they tried to cover up what they did back then. So they actually, their propaganda was genuinely to try to cover up what they were doing. Hamas and these terrorists of what they're doing now, they don't try to cover it up. It's they let you know. They want everyone to know what they're doing, yet there are still deniers. So if I am able to use my platform at all to share the truth, to share what is actually happening, I've been to Israel 7 times since October 7th, to try to interview as many people as I can, real stories, real personal stories. I have to do it, and I will always continue to do that and use my platforms to share the truth and to speak for humanity.
But you know, it's interesting. Obviously, you say it so easily, but most people have decided not to use their platform and not to face the backlash. And then I'm sure there's people who look at you two and think, well, it's all rosy, and they get invited to a lot of events, and she's probably gained more followers and gets PR packages, right? No, right? Talk about some of the backlash.
It's actually, in the beginning, was the complete opposite.
Right.
Especially as an entertainer and in the entertainment industry, you would have thought the entertainment industry would be the first industry that would have stepped up in a really strong way. And of course, we all saw it was the opposite. Right. Even Jewish entertainers went the opposite way. And I've had so many people behind the scenes come up to me and say, "Thank you so much for what you're doing. You're really taking one for the team." And I will say, well, what are you doing?
Yeah. How about you?
And they're like, well, I posted a little bit in the beginning, but I got, the death threats and the hate. And so I stopped. Okay, I get death threats every day. I get hate every single day. That's not an excuse. I'm sorry. It's not an excuse. And first of all, I think all of us here know a lot of them are bots. They're not real people that are online attacking everybody. But yes, I understand some of them are real people and we have to be careful. But this is the time that everyone needs to step up and speak out, whether it's up your platform online or showing up to an event or donating or whatever it is that you can to show your support. You have to do it. But I lost hundreds of thousands of followers in the beginning, actually, and dancers that I danced with for 6 years.
Right.
I literally have messages from them saying, "I'm sorry, we can't collaborate with you anymore because of your support for Israel."
Right.
Most of my brand deals that I had just went away. So it was actually the complete opposite. However, it's important to talk about the negative, but the positive that has come from it, from staying true to what I believe in and staying true to who I am, the people I've met through this, passion of mine, I don't even want to call it work because I feel like it's just my true passion, has been amazing. I've created documentaries. I've done all kinds of things that I would have never imagined, 5 years ago if you would ask me. So it was definitely the opposite of that in the beginning, but it has now led me, I'm on the path that I'm supposed to be on. I know that for a fact. And I think everything I've done in my entertainment career has led me to this point, to be able to have a platform, to be able to use it for something so important.
Yeah, and I know you influence so many people to be brave and courageous. Noor, I want to ask you the same question, and I imagine advocating for something where that the Iran regime is behind so many assassinations and behind so many propaganda campaigns, and so they're capable of so much, and their tentacles reach very far. What are some of the threats you've received, some of the fears that you have, and what kind of, what are some of the dangers that you have now had to kind of take on because of, or the risks that you've had to take on because of this advocacy work that you do?
I think that there's always been some level of risk growing up in the family that I've grown up in, and because of the work that my father does, his life has always been in danger. He's, I think, the number one person that they would love to eliminate. And, we've had, growing up, there were a lot of FBI situations that came in at different times because security threats were raised or what have you. But in terms of the threats online, nothing that I face comes even close to what the people in Iran are facing every day. And seeing if they can, go out there and face batons and bullets every day, I think that, what I do is hardly comparable. And I just really don't focus on it. I think that there is some obviously a lot of harmful backlash that comes from the regime propaganda and the amount of funding that's behind their infiltration of all of our social media. So it adds importance to using our platforms to tell the truth in whatever way that we can, organically. I think some of the stuff that, they're creative in their ways. One thing that's been particularly harmful is they'll pose as supporters of my father and aim to sow discord. And then it works. They sow division. Right. And that's why it makes it so important for people to go directly to his source or directly to my source for information. I think last week I received some information that someone had created an account posing as me asking people for money, and that some people were actually sending them money online. And, those things, again, like, they're designed to make us, A, look bad, and B, I don't know where that money is going, but it's nowhere good. So I think that it's just really important to, though I'm not someone who would have ever really had social media if people weren't making profiles for me. Actually, that's what led me to even make a profile, was that, there were all these artificial ones popping up on Twitter, on Instagram. Yes. So I just decided I should just have my own out there. Right. I think that it's ultimately been primarily to, be able to put stuff out straight from the source. And it's really important for people to do their research.
What are some of the interactions that you have with the people of Iran? I mean, I'm sure they're very grateful to hear from you.
The most of my following is in Iran, actually. And it's been really eye-opening to hear straight from them their stories and their struggles and their hardship. I wish I could share up more of it on my platform, but you want to protect these people. And I think that it makes me feel really close to them. Since I've never been able to go, living in exile here, it's my primary source of information for what life is like there. So, the stories are very broad but hopeful, and I'm really inspired by the tone of all of them. I mean, obviously some people, sound very broken, and I try to give them strength when I can. And I wish I could open the hundreds of messages that I get every day, because it's really hard not being able to show up and help. But we try to show up here and help in however we can. So, and tell the stories. I think we're exploring a lot of different storytelling mediums to be able to put out, their truth and amplify their voices. And that's really my goal. It's not to lead with my own agenda or my own feelings, but to try to get a pulse for what the general consensus is and share what I can. Also understanding that there are differing opinions. Not everyone is reaching out to me. So I try to stay, close to whatever truth I know and not offend. But it's definitely been interesting.
Well, knowing you in the capacity that I have, and your parents, it's you're authentic to who you are, and that's all you could be. For people who, I'm sure people watching this episode do have familiarity with both of you, but if someone just drops from the moon and they realize, well, you're a princess, right, and you're living in the United States. I know, it's such a weird title, right? But it's your title. It's who you are, and it's your legacy. And regardless of each one of us and what the title we inherit, we do inherit a legacy. And I know that's informed so much of who you are and who you embody. What is it that you hope in this position? Because it is a unique position, and it is something that was bestowed upon you. What do you hope, or what role do you hope to play in the future of Iran, and how do you envision the future of Iran?
Well, currently I hope to provide some comfort and support for the people inside, to feel like their struggle isn't forgotten just because the media might not be giving it the attention it deserves. I think that's very important to me, is keeping their voice alive and making sure that it's heard on this side of the world. In the future, we've worked a lot on the Iran Prosperity Project, which is a roadmap to hit the ground running should the regime fall, so that it doesn't open a void for chaos. And that to me has been an extremely interesting process in terms of concrete plans to rebuild every aspect of the economy. White papers, expert panels, everything that you could turn to, policy proposals, anything that you could turn to that you would need should that moment come. And my hope is that, it's an Iran where every Iranian is almost like a founder of this new nation, and equality, dignity, justice all thrive, and that Iran is once again an active participant in the global economy as well. so that, you know, people can invest and actually, you know, women can lead and entrepreneurs can thrive. So I would say those are my dreams for a future Iran among many.
You know, what's interesting in hearing both of you speak is how you're part of a generation, and a generation that we are watching really do a 180 from where they should be on so many important issues, right? And what I mean by that is we look at people who are our peers, our coworkers, our friends, our family members in some instances, who believe that they're actually good people, that they are actually social justice warriors, that they actually care for the marginalized. And now fill in the blank as to what the marginalized is, whether it's racial, cultural, political, sexual, what have you. And yet it feels like all of us, and you two in particular, in the front lines of the causes that you're fighting for, are fighting against that tide, which seems like it would be a natural
alignment
with reality and the truth, right? So, I mean, talk a little bit about the challenges of being who you are in your age bracket, and dealing with people who are not moved by facts or reality or even emotion.
I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm literally living in an alternate universe. Like, it's sometimes I see and hear these things, especially because I do a lot of my content. I'll go to colleges. I'll go on campus and speak to students. So it's obviously a generation a little bit younger than me, and I'm speaking to them, and sometimes I'm listening to them, and it takes everything out of me, not just to explode, because
You're all morons.
I'm hearing them talk, and I'm just like, how is this real? Like, you literally feel like you're living in an alternate universe sometimes, or like you're in a movie. Like, this can't be real life. But then it's like not even just the students. You hear, it's like they're learning this from their teachers. And you're at these college campuses where like every parent wanted their kid to go to an Ivy League school.
Right.
And it's especially the Ivy League schools now that are teaching these kids these things, and the professors. I mean, it's just so bizarre to me. I don't understand it. But again, you look. If I'm gonna compare you can't compare that to the Holocaust. But if you look back in that time, it was happening on the college campuses as well back then. So it's really hard. That's why for me, my following, especially before October 7th, was predominantly Gen Z and the younger generation, from my dance videos, from TikTok. So that's why I'm always trying to create, different content, different style content. One video will be me just speaking about the conflict. Another video will be doing a dance video with the survivors. Another video is me at UCLA speaking to the students. I'm always trying to do different styles, because that everyone relates to something different, and especially the younger generation, especially with the algorithms and the For You page, etc. You never know whose page you're going to end up on. And my following is really all over the world and all generations. So that's why I'm always trying to switch it up and always trying to attract, someone differently. And I believe that, social media can be such a scary, crazy place, especially for our younger generation. And especially apps like TikTok. TikTok is my biggest platform. I have 9.2 million alone just on TikTok.
Amazing.
And what I'm seeing on there is like TikTok literally is promoting terrorism on there. I can't even say like anti-Israel, because it also feeds into, I don't know, do you guys find with like content about Iran?
I'm not on TikTok.
You're not on TikTok. I'm curious. I would actually be curious.
Probably get on it.
We should. I know. I kind of go back and forth on the TikTok issue.
Listen, we have to. It's like, the thing is, there have been times, because my videos, a dance video on TikTok will get millions of views, and then a video that I'm posting about what's happening in Israel will either get literally removed, or get clearly shadow banned. And so there are times where I'm like, okay, maybe I should just stop posting my videos about Israel on here. I'm losing followers. It's not getting seen. Like, what's the point? But that's what they want, right? They're going to do that because they want us to not post. They want us to not share. So we can't do that. But literally, Hitler was right was a trending hashtag on TikTok.
Wow.
Pro-Palestine was a trending hashtag on TikTok, but it's not actually pro-Palestine. It's pro-Hamas, pro-terrorism. And they allow these videos to live there. They don't get removed. Yet my video sharing a survivor's story gets removed.
Tell me a positive story about someone you've either, I don't want to say converted, that's the wrong word, but someone you've moved to you've educated, that's the right word. Tell me a positive story that about somebody you've educated and how it's empowered you to do more of this?
There are so many positive stories like that. And I'm happy you asked that because, again, it's so easy to talk about the negative, and it's important to talk about the negative because unfortunately there is so much of it. And it's important for the world to see like how people react to these types of important topics. But the positivity that has come with it and the education that has come with it, I really try to make my videos educational. And when I do the videos in public, those are the best because not only does it create a viral video, but I'll edit these videos into like a 5-minute long video, but I'm there sometimes 3 hours speaking with people. And for me, the collaborations, that's why I'm always trying to collaborate with people. That's actually how Nora and I met. I literally DM'd her on Instagram because I did a video for like kind of about the Women Life Freedom movement. I don't know if you saw it, but I did a dance video in Israel with Iranian women for the Women Life Freedom movement, but we can talk about that after.
Amazing.
But the collaboration. So I did a video with man Loai Al-Sharif. He's an Arab Muslim peace activist. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He is incredible.
Yes.
And we went to Santa Monica Pier, and he held up a sign that said, "I'm an Arab Muslim peace activist that supports the only Jewish state of Israel." And I said, "I am an American Jewish woman that supports peace in the Middle East. Let's talk." And at first, the amount of like stares that he was getting for standing there with me, like no one could believe that an Arab Muslim was standing with me and supporting Israel. And he was getting all kinds of stares, all kinds of remarks. Then there was a man from Ireland who literally has no ties to the Middle East whatsoever. Okay. He came up and said, "Hitler had the right idea about you guys. Jews are the reason for all the problems in the world." And was like disgusted with Loai. Then we had a girl that had her hijab on, and she came up and she was like filming us, and I couldn't really gauge her reaction of how she was feeling. And I was like, "Hi," and she's like, "What are you guys doing here?" And I said, "We're here, trying to promote peace and understanding and unity and try to have conversations." And she goes, "I support you."
Great.
And I said, "Where are you from?" And she said, "Palestine." And I was like, "Can I give you a hug?" I couldn't believe it because 2 seconds before, this man from Ireland who has literally no ties and nothing to do with this conflict at all whatsoever. Then there was a group of like college Muslim boys. They're probably in college, and they came up. They weren't combative at all, but they were not agreeing with Loai at all. Like they were not seeing eye to eye whatsoever. We ended up speaking to them for about 30 minutes, these kids. By the end of the conversation, their minds were blown because Loai is like a genius. I mean, I don't know if you don't follow him, you need to. He is so educated and so smart. And they said, "You know what? Thank you so much for sharing this with us. We are now going to go home and do more research and share this with our friends." And we have it all on tape, and it was amazing. So the positivity does come from it. Education is so important. And like Nora said, do your research.
Right.
It's so easy to just see a video online and just believe what everyone says.
Yes, exactly.
But everyone has to do their, even for my videos. Like I hope people go and do more research after watching mine.
I know. And we're online as, blue-haired college kids are like in favor of Khamenei, but then you talk to the young people of Iran and they love what Trump is doing. They even love Bibi Netanyahu for what he's doing.
It's crazy.
And it's crazy to really juxtapose these things. And you think, well, the people of Iran are living this reality and they have an informed opinion, but what is the privilege, to use their own word, blue-haired college kid have, any skin in the game or any knowledge of anything that's going on? To that point, I mean, how do you see the young people of the Middle East really taking on this next chapter to really bring together this global solidarity? We see the Abraham Accords have done tremendously well. We see the young people in Israel and the young people, your comment about the music video that you did really sparked this thing about how, yes, there is a lot of solidarity in the Middle East. The young girl in the hijab, she gets it.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember doing undercover work on the UC college campuses just to follow their Muslim student associations and their apartheid week, and they would set up these bloody walls. And I remember just doing undercover filming, and this Palestinian PhD student passed by, and he was like using such foul language, and he's like, "I don't need you guys to do any of this for us. If you're doing this for us, we don't need this. This is not what we believe." And it's true. Look, there are a lot of radicalized Palestinians, but there are also many people in the Arab world, including Palestinians and others, who really see a different way forward.
I don't know if you know follow someone named Ahmed. He is incredible. He grew up in Gaza until he was 17, and he left Gaza, and he's the first person to say what all these people are doing on the college campus is actually hurting us.
Right.
Like, he's the first person to say that.
He's not wrong.
Yeah.
He's not wrong. But, the point being, like, how do we, and social media being such a, really just adding fuel to the fire, as you said, both a positive and a negative. Mm-hmm. Positive because we're able to get all this information out there. Look at the Green Revolution, and then you look at the Women Life Freedom movement, which was entirely possible because of organization on social media. Again, I want you to speak to more about this generation, how you see them and their potential.
There are two main problems, I think, for people outside of Iran when they're internalizing a lot of this information and expressing opinions. One is they're equating still the regime in Iran with its people when it exists in diametric opposition to its people. They are the number one oppressed people by this regime. They are not represented by this regime. They rule by fear, not popular consensus and corruption. I think that if they did, like we said, do some research, they would understand this difference, and perhaps they would support the Iranian people themselves, look at what they're actually saying, what they're actually dealing with every day, what they're writing in graffiti, the way they're behaving in peaceful protest by refusing to conform, or even the way they, protested taking to the streets before, the mass campaign of terror that the regime waged and these executions and all these tightening of, extremist laws. And then the second thing is that any freedom-loving person on this side of the world, anyone who enjoys any of the liberties that we do here, and who respects freedom of religion, who respects, the right to love who you want, who respects, women being able to hold positions of authority, right. Or be educated or operate independently, who likes animals, anyone who has a dog, they don't want you having a dog or walking your dog. People are staying in their homes with their dogs over there because they can shoot them in the street. I think all of these people should, again, look at who you're aligning yourself with, look at who you're supporting. They're, practicing a religion. You might look at them and think, we want them to be free to practice whatever they want. Look at what they're subjugating their people to. The people of Iran respect every religion. They want to, be active participants in the world. They want to be able to be free to do what they want, believe what they want, learn, be educated, speak freely. They deserve all of these things that you're actually using when you're speaking in favor of the right. regime, right. ironically. Right. So what's really bizarre to me is seeing all of the hypocrisy of that. Right,
like you're doing all this advocacy work for women life freedom, Zan Zindagi Azadi, for women who are literally fighting. I mean, it's obviously a much broader campaign, but the literal meaning of this is because of, like you said, Mahsa Amini, who just wanted to show a little bit of her hair, and they're literally fighting for that right. And then you have these women who have all the rights in the world using their platform to basically support the oppressors.
The oppressors, exactly. Or, I see it. Yeah, I won't get into all of the different hypocrites I've seen online supporting the regime in Iran.
How you deal with the hypocrisy?
I think I deal with it by I remind myself when people lash out at me that I'm not advocating for something controversial. I'm advocating for human rights. That is not political. That is just, right. A core belief I have that they should have their basic human rights. Right. And I don't think that a lot of these people would disagree with me. I think they're just not looking into it. You know what I mean? So, and if they do disagree with me, then that's okay. Right. But that's to me, I'm not going to change the way I feel about fundamental human rights. I use mine every day. So I think that, it doesn't necessarily get to me. Again, when you're seeing what these people inside Iran go through, it's really hard to feel victimized by something like this. Mm-hmm. But I think just keep speaking your truth, keep trying to amplify the voices of the people that you're trying to support, and stay focused on the mission, because I do think that ultimately, light will overcome darkness in this case, and hopefully in all cases going forward.
Sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you stay hopeful? How has this really changed your trajectory? Do you find it difficult to go back to the kind of work you were doing before October 7th?
Oh yeah, I mean even right after October 7th, like I found it, dance for me specifically was always my outlet to express myself and be happy, and like my page was very bright and vibrant, and I was collaborating with all kinds of different people through dance. And after October 7th, I was so sad, I was so angry, and I like didn't know how to blend my worlds at all. I felt like I had my activism here and then my dance and singing and acting. And then I created actually a dance video with Nova survivors at the Nova site, and actually with the released hostage, Moran Stelly and I realized people went to that festival to dance. They went to hear music, and I wanted to bring that back. So I did this whole dance concept, We Can Dance Again. And it was a really powerful video. But still every day, like when there's so much going on in the world, it's hard because now I'm just so in it. I'm so in it, and I'm constantly speaking to people from Israel every day. Even the parents of Omer Nutra, whose body is still held captive, that they haven't released yet. It's like I can't even imagine how they are feeling every day, knowing all the living hostages are home. Thank gosh, but that Hamas is still holding their son's body. Like, just give them the body, give them that after everything you've done. So still every day, I'm still like, I feel so responsible. I feel this sense of responsibility that I have to every day do something to use my voice. And again, it's not just for Israel. It's not just for the Jewish people. It's really for all of humanity. Way before October 7th and way before my Holocaust series, when the war started in Russia, Ukraine, I was posting to help the kids in Ukraine. During the Black Lives Matter protests, like I'm always using my platform, even if it has nothing to do with me. Now it's definitely more prominent and at the forefront of everything I do. But even after this war is over, I will always continue to use it. And I don't think I could ever just go back to just being a dancer, just being a singer, just being an actress. It's just not who I am anymore.
Do you think this anti-Semitism that we've seen unleashed in the United States, and I've always said this, the war in Israel will end much sooner than what we're seeing here.
Anti-Semitism has always been here, and it always will be, unfortunately.
Right. And it's amped up, like you said, without any hiding. So we've got it in the press, we have it in universities, we see it in popular culture. Yeah. It's everywhere. Do you feel like you've now been marginalized because of your advocacy work and will continue to be?
For sure, unfortunately. But that makes me want to go even harder. I feel like it's kind of a crazy concept, but I think the more hate that I get, or the more opportunities maybe I don't get because of, I literally had somebody the other day say, she works in branding, and she's like, and she's Jewish, by the way, and she's super supportive, and she's like, so like, just wondering, like, do you think like you're gonna now like calm down on posting on about Israel and about like anti-Semitism? Like, do you think you're gonna, now that things are a little bit less, going on in Israel, like, do you think you'll calm down? And I'm like, no, I don't.
No, yeah.
I don't. I can't imagine it. Like, again, I love dancing, I love singing, acting, and that's why I'm always doing that. But I'm never gonna stop now. I think that will, again, obviously, my platform is just one out of billions, right? But if I have the opportunity, and like I have seen stuff I have posted has made a difference. It has made an impact. Even the hostages, Emily Damari and Romy Gonen, they're released hostages. I met their families before they were released and were really attached to their stories. And when they were released, I messaged them on Instagram like, "Hi girls, I know you don't know me, but I would love to meet with you." And they both wrote me back, "Yes." And I met with them, and they waited to meet me in person. And they said, "I wore this dress at the Grammys, where I wore this really big ribbon that said 'Bring them home' at the Grammys." And it was this, caused a lot of controversy and all these things. And they said that they were allowed to watch TV with their captors twice during captivity.
Wow.
And one of the times during captivity, they were watching I-24 News. And I was on the TV wearing my dress, and they didn't know who I was.
Wow.
And they just said, "Who is that girl?" Like, they couldn't believe that somebody in America was like doing that for them. And they always, during their time in captivity, referred to me as the girl from the TV.
Wow.
And they didn't know me. They like didn't remember my name, anything. And then when I messaged them on Instagram, they told me, and they were like, they went to each other and they're like, oh my God, like the girl from the TV messaged us, and I got to meet them. So you never know the impact you make. All that to say is you never know the impact that you make and who's watching and who's seeing it from all around the world. That's why social media is important and powerful, because you can reach people not just in Iran, not just in Israel, not just in the United States. You can reach people all around the world. There are people around the world that probably don't even know what is going on in Iran. And by you sharing your content, they're going to hear it and they're going to find out. There are people who, the younger generation, especially in the United States, isn't forced to learn about the Holocaust. Every state in the United States isn't required to teach their kids about the Holocaust. So if I can use my platform and share something about the Holocaust and educate, I have to do it.
Right.
So
it really comes down to education. It's crazy what a lack of education we have here, and then the emotions are high and the knowledge is low, and it makes for this very ugly situation in both of your cases. I asked your mother and your father when I interviewed them the same question, and I'm going to ask it to you. And it's very similar to what I just asked Montana. But are there moments where you just want to put this all aside and say, you know what, I don't owe this situation anything, and I'll do what I can, but I also have a life to live. Is there a moment where you just don't have the resiliency to move on?
I'm way too attached now to this. I refuse to give up until Iran's free. I'm too attached now to the potential for this to happen. I really see the possibility, and I love my dad more than anything, my grandma more than anything, but I really want them to be able to set foot in the country again in whatever capacity. I just want them to be able to go back. And, when things are so important to people, important to you, you get even more attached to them, obviously.
It's true.
But
is that where you get your strength from? Where do you get your strength from in this fight?
I think probably they've modeled that for me forever. It doesn't seem like something that I can't imagine not having it. It doesn't occur. I don't view it as strength. It just kind of feels like purpose. And I think purpose in my own family has been a huge differentiator between people who crumble under the pain of everything that they've been through and the people that push on and actually make a difference. So, as painful as a lot of the things that we've gone through as a family have been, the fact that there is still work to be done has helped push everyone forward and stay focused on the goal, I think.
What are you focused on now in that world? I mean, is there a project? Is there a cause? I know you and your father as well are very much focused on the economic part, which I think is brilliant, because the world cares about investing and incentivized opportunity more so than human rights, unfortunately. And I think you're very right to say, who can argue with human rights, right? The case is a no-brainer, you would think, right, to really support the people of Iran. But since people really don't have that, or people who are in a position of power aren't moved by human rights, I think that economic incentive is a big part of it. But is there anything specifically important to you, a part of this that you wish to push forward?
I think we're working on a lot of different methods of storytelling, because I think personal stories really go a long way. The Munich conference that we all went to this summer was deeply impactful because it was the broadest assembly of diverse opposition forces, and the biggest show of unity among the opposition for a democratic Iran, but also because so many of the people who were directly touched by the regime were in one place. People who had lost their children, people who had lost their siblings, loved ones, and also been personally maimed in peaceful protest. Seeing them all together, telling their stories in one place really hit home, I think, in a different way for a lot of people who felt that this was an abstract thing happening somewhere else. But I think for me, what I really want people to understand is that people on this side of the world to understand is that they're not exempt from the regime's terror. This regime funds terrorism that infiltrates our world every day and ideologically is spreading its ideology into our world every day and funding a lot of propaganda and education initiatives that are spreading misinformation. And I'm seeing a lot of the things that led to the revolution and the subsequent reversal of Iran's progress into the Dark Ages occur again here because of misunderstandings.
Right. You're the perfect person to really be an ambassador to that message.
And then there's also some technological innovation that's going on around developing a platform where Iranians and allies can come together to exchange ideas using verified methods of identifying themselves as, someone actually inside Iran, someone actually who's an ally. And basically there they'll be able to vote and exchange ideas and kind of create a forum for developing the path forward so that, like we mentioned earlier, Iranians can sort of behave like founders of the future nation. So this is using a bunch of different tools like blockchain and a bunch of others. So that will hopefully, in partnership with IranNation.com, be something that we can use to unify and,
I love it. Concrete steps forward.
Yeah.
Last question for both of you. I know there's a lot of people out there, Montana, we kind of alluded to this in the beginning, that they want to be as courageous as the two of you have been, or perhaps they want to do more storytelling, or they want to share content, or they have millions of followers and they want to be brave, but they're afraid to do so, and they've been conditioned to only give their followers what they want and not what they should be hearing, right? So it's a great position of responsibility to have this kind of platform and to not use it to educate people, right, on these matters. What would be your message, start with you, Montana, to people who are in that position, who have that ability to educate and would like to? What would be your message to them?
I always say this, you actually don't have to have the millions of followers. It's a blessing, and I'm so grateful that I have them, but you don't have to have millions of followers to make an impact, to make a difference, to share a post. You can have literally one follower and share a post. You also, social media isn't everything. It's a huge part of it, but it isn't everything. Even having conversations in your workplace with coworkers, I think people these days are so scared to even have a conversation with someone that slightly disagrees with them or slightly has a different opinion than them. Everyone is so scared, again, because they're scared to get fired. They're scared to lose a friend. They're scared for all these things. But just have a conversation. Be open to just hearing their point of view if they're willing to talk with you about it. Right. So that can happen just in your workplace, even at school. I think with the younger generation, I always say, like, if you see something, say something. I know it's like such a cliche thing to say, but kids are also scared if they hear somebody being anti-Semitic or Islamophobic or anything. They're scared to say something because they don't want their friends to know that they're like a tattletale or something like that, but they have to say something to an authority. But when it comes to social media specifically, I think really doing the research and following people that are sharing accurate information. At the end of the day, I'm not a historian. I'm not. But what I am is a storyteller, and I'm someone who cares deeply about human beings and people and humanity. And that's why I did go, if I'm speaking about the war in Israel currently, I did go to Israel 7 different times to meet with as many survivors as I can, as many actual people experiencing this, so I could share their stories and use my platform to amplify their voices. Right. And last trip,
went to Gaza.
And the last trip to Israel, I actually went into Gaza as well. I went into Rafah, and that was another thing that was important to me, of hearing all the propaganda that was happening and hearing people saying aid is not getting to these people. Israel's blocking the aid.
What did you see?
And I went into Rafah. I went in with the GHF, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. I was one of a very few amount of people that was allowed into the site, and I saw over 10,000 people enter that site that day. So they have 4 different sites all throughout Gaza. I went to their site in Rafah, and I saw over 10,000 people get fed. The work that the GHF was doing was beyond incredible. I mean, none of these people looked hungry. They all were so thankful. They were laughing. They were running if they needed any kind of medical care whatsoever. The GHF was there to give them medical care. I was dancing with them, hugging them, all kinds of things. And I shared the whole thing on my social media because I wanted everybody to see what was actually happening there. Now, it was a very sad situation. What has happened in Gaza is extremely sad, and there's nothing that if you're a human being, you can't say that what has happened there is beyond terrible and sad. But there's severe propaganda that is coming out, and it's just not true. Right. Something that was crazy is the exact site that I went to. 1 week later, the exact site during the women's distribution, because they separate the men from the women and children to get their distribution, because the men were actually hurting their own women and children during the distribution. The exact site Hamas ended up almost infiltrating. They were dressing up as women because they have their hijabs on and you can't see. And the local Gazan workers got a hold of it and shut the whole site down right before it happened. And now the site is not, it's shut down now.
Yeah, so Hamas was basically infiltrating and hoarding the supplies
From their own people.
Which was not never mentioned in
And I interviewed plenty of people. I interviewed a little boy, and I asked him about Hamas. And again, he didn't know who I was. He didn't know anything. I just was talking to him, and he literally said, "Hamas hides in our hospitals. They sleep in our hospitals. They hide in our schools. They sleep in our schools." So for me, again, it's always been important to just amplify the truth and share the truth. And honestly, I've learned so much about what is going on in Iran, by the way, through Noor, through everything that through social media, through meeting so many different types of people. Through Noor, I got to meet 2 other incredible activists that Noor has connected me to share their stories about what happened to them.
She interviewed them.
Yeah, I interviewed them over Zoom, and I wish I could have been in person, but one was in Italy and one was in London.
Wow.
And so I think that's something that people just
Storytelling
is the most important. I know it's scary. Listen, I would be lying if I said I didn't lose friends or I didn't lose jobs, but the positive impact that has come from me sharing these stories and sharing these truths outweighs any of that. And I promise you, having conversations and sharing the truth, it will outweigh any of that.
You know, no one would believe that an Iranian is sitting next to a Jewish woman having a conversation about how much you guys have in common with all the advocacy work that you do, because you stand up for all kinds of issues and ones that promote peace and harmony, especially in the Middle East in terms of coexistence. Noor, what would your advice be to people who want to get involved? They want to have a part in whatever cause they believe in, really. What would be your advice to them?
I think it would be to educate themselves and talk to people with the opposite view as well, and try to ask as many questions as you can and look to independent sources, and, you know, to try to speak up, because I think a lot of what, at least we've seen in Iran, fall apart in huge part came from good people, educated people being silent, thinking that this would just pass, and that, you know, obviously the worst case scenario wouldn't come to fruition. And people here often feel as though they're exempt, or this stuff all happens far away. And, you know, we're waking up and things are changing on this side of the world every day for the worst. And I really think, you know, be brave and speak up if you can, but do so in an informed way. But I also just, you know, I respect everyone's process. There's huge risk that comes with these things.
Right.
And I've grown up in a high risk environment, and it's not a life that I chose, but it's one that I feel like I was put into for a reason. And I wouldn't stand to advise anyone, but I hope that if people do speak up.
Noor's the most humble person.
She's so humble.
I know.
But as you perfectly said, lots of risk, but also lots of reward. I know the 2 of you are friends because of your advocacy work. And I get to meet people that are wonderful like the 2 of you because of the work that we all do in this field. And I consider myself blessed to have known you and to have had this conversation with you. And I really think you guys serve as such great role models for both people in the United States and around the world, and especially young people. And I thank you for your courage.
Thank you.
As we defined the episode by courage, I thank you for your courage. And to all of you who'd like to check out this episode and more, you can go to foreigndesknews.com. You can check us out on YouTube or social media. And I thank the PAWC for their collaboration in this episode as well. You can check out their website, pawcla.org, or check them out on social media. Thank you so much for joining.